A Jack Russell Terrier stranded on train tracks, her 3 helpless puppies trembling as the train thunders closer. Time is running out, and their fate hangs by a thread. What unfolds next will leave you on the edge of your seat. As dawn broke over the serene Southern America landscape, the first rays of sunlight bathed the countryside in a warm, golden glow. The air was crisp, laced with the earthy scent of dew and wildflowers, while birds serenaded the morning with their songs, their voices blending seamlessly with the rustling leaves swayed by a gentle breeze. It seemed like an ordinary, peaceful start to the day, but on the railway track slicing through the rolling fields, a grim scene was unfolding. A frail Jack Russell Terrier lay tied to the cold steel rails, her small body trembling with exhaustion. Her coat, once vibrant and glossy, was now dull and matted, clinging to her emaciated frame. Her dark, soulful eyes darted around, filled with panic, as though searching for an escape. Beside her, 3 tiny puppies nestled together, their shivering bodies barely able to withstand the morning chill. Their pitiful cries pierced the quiet, each whimper carrying a desperate plea for help. In the distance, the faint, ominous sound of a train whistle cut through the tranquility. The rails began to vibrate faintly, their metallic hum a chilling herald of the approaching locomotive. The mother dog whined weakly, pulling against the ropes with whatever strength she could muster. Her puppies, sensing the imminent danger, pressed closer to her, their tiny paws sinking into the dirt. The train's whistle grew louder, each blast cutting through the stillness like a countdown to catastrophe. Driving along the quiet country road in his well-kept silver Hyundai, Jeremy Harris tapped his fingers against the steering wheel, matching the rhythm of a hymn playing softly on the radio. The morning drive, usually a time of quiet reflection, found his thoughts wandering to the challenges awaiting him at the local high school where he taught. Jeremy, at 50, was the embodiment of steadfastness. A revered teacher and a devoted man of faith, his life appeared orderly and grounded. A small wooden cross dangled from the rearview mirror, swaying gently with each curve in the road, a quiet symbol of the faith that guided him. Yet, beneath his composed exterior, Jeremy bore the weight of loss. 3 years earlier, his beloved wife Grace had passed away after a battle with cancer, leaving an irreplaceable void in his life. His daughter Emma, then just 12, had been thrust into the difficult years of adolescence without her mother's presence. Now 15, Emma had grown into a fiercely independent teenager, often clashing with Jeremy's structured, principled parenting style. Their once close bond had become strained, marked by misunderstandings and tension. As he navigated the gentle bends of the road, Jeremy whispered a silent prayer. "Lord, grant me the wisdom to guide her and the patience to love her through these trials." His prayer was interrupted by a faint sound carried on the wind, a high-pitched whimper. Furrowing his brow, he slowed the car, rolling down the window to better hear the distressing noise. The cries grew louder, pulling at his heart. Creating a bend, his gaze froze on the horrifying scene ahead. There, lying on the tracks, was the Jack Russell Terrier, her movements frantic as she strained against her restraints. Her puppies, oblivious to the peril they faced, whimpered helplessly at her side. Jeremy's heart raced and his instincts kicked in. Slamming on the brakes, he brought his car to a halt on the roadside and leapt out. The train was now visible in the distance, a massive, unyielding force barreling down the tracks. Without hesitation, Jeremy sprinted toward the dogs, his breath quick and shallow as adrenaline coursed through his veins. "Hold on!" he shouted, even though he knew they couldn't understand. Each step brought him closer to the tracks, the metallic hum growing louder, the vibration intensifying with every passing second. As he reached the terrified family, he dropped to his knees, his hands trembling as he worked to untie the rope securing the mother dog. The puppies whimpered louder, their tiny bodies pressing against their mother in fear. The train's whistle blared again, deafeningly close now. With one final tug, the knot gave way, and Jeremy scooped up the puppies, cradling them in one arm while guiding the mother dog off the tracks with the other. The train thundered past just seconds later, the force of its wake nearly knocking him off balance. Standing on the side of the tracks, his chest heaving, Jeremy looked down at the trembling dogs in his arms. Relief washed over him as he realized they were safe. The mother dog licked his hand in gratitude, her exhausted eyes meeting his with a silent expression of thanks. Dropping to his knees beside the mother dog, Jeremy's hands fumbled with the rugged knots binding her to the rusty railroad tracks. The coarse rope bit into his palms as he fought to free her. The distant wail of the train's whistle cut through the air, growing louder and closer, sending a chill down his spine. "Come on, come on," he muttered under his breath, his fingers trembling with urgency. The Jack Russell Terrier let out a faint whimper, her wide, frightened eyes meeting his with a glimmer of hope. Her 3 puppies huddled close to her, their tiny cries piercing the tense air, their fragile bodies pressed against her for safety. Jeremy stole a glance over his shoulder. The train loomed no more than a few hundred feet away, its massive presence bearing down like a relentless juggernaut. "God, give me strength," he whispered, his voice cracking as he gave one last, desperate pull. The knot finally gave way, and he yanked the rope free, his hands raw and stinging from the effort. Scooping up the puppies with one arm, he called out to the mother dog, "Come on, girl, we've got to move." The dog hesitated, her legs wobbling beneath her. Then, as if sensing the gravity of the moment, she staggered to her feet and stumbled after him. Jeremy sprinted off the tracks, the thunderous roar of the train bearing down on them. Just as its deafening force screamed past, he leaped onto the grassy embankment, clutching the squirming puppies to his chest. The wind from the train's wake ruffled his hair and left a sharp ringing in his ears. For a few seconds, silence hung in the air, broken only by Jeremy's ragged breaths. The mother dog collapsed beside him, her trembling body still intact. She let out a soft, grateful whimper, nudging Jeremy's arm with her nose. He exhaled deeply, his head falling back onto the cool grass. Gazing at the sky, he murmured, "Thank you." The fading rumble of the train disappeared into the distance, leaving only the soft cries of the puppies and the pounding rhythm of his heart. As Jeremy sat up, holding the puppies close, a sense of resolve washed over him. This wasn't just a rescue, it was a moment that would change his life. He carried the puppies to his car, the mother dog trailing behind on unsteady legs. Placing the puppies gently on the passenger seat and helping the exhausted dog into the back, Jeremy started the engine. The drive home was quiet, save for the occasional whines from the puppies and the labored breaths of the mother dog. His modest suburban home came into view, its neatly kept lawn and flower beds a stark contrast to the chaos of the past hour. Parking in the driveway, Jeremy paused, his hands gripping the steering wheel. The weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on his mind. Gathering himself, he carefully carried the puppies into the shaded backyard, the towering oak tree offering a cool refuge. The mother dog followed slowly, her coat glinting in the afternoon sun as she limped behind him. Jeremy placed the puppies on a soft patch of grass and hurried inside to retrieve water and some leftover roast chicken from the fridge. "Here you go," he said softly, setting the bowls down. The mother dog hesitated, her wary eyes fixed on him before cautiously lapping at the water. The puppies, too young for solids, nuzzled into their mother's side, seeking warmth and reassurance. Inside the house, Emma, his teenage daughter, lounged on the couch, scrolling through her phone with one earbud in, her auburn hair pulled into a messy bun. The muffled beat of a pop song echoed faintly. When Jeremy entered, his dirt-streaked clothes and intense expression caught her attention. Did you fall in a ditch or something?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Jeremy hesitated. "I found some dogs," he said simply. Emma pulled out her earbud, intrigued. "Dogs? Like strays?" "Something like that," Jeremy replied. "They were in trouble. I brought them home." Curiosity sparked in Emma's eyes as she followed him outside. She stopped abruptly when she saw the Jack Russell Terrier and her puppies. "Whoa," she whispered, stepping closer. "Where did you find them?" "On the tracks," Jeremy said, his voice heavy. "Someone tied them up, left them to die." Emma froze, her expression hard to read. She crouched beside the puppies, brushing her fingers against their soft fur. "Who would do something so awful?" she murmured. Over the next few days, Jeremy poured all his energy into nursing the dogs back to health. He carefully cleaned the mother dog's wounds, prepared hearty, nutritious meals for her, and made sure the puppies were kept warm and safe in their cozy spot in the garage. Emma, initially aloof, began to linger around more often. She'd stand near the backyard, watching her father tend to the dogs, and occasionally offered to help with small tasks. One puppy in particular seemed to capture her attention, a tiny, timid Jack Russell Terrier with soulful eyes and a faint, almost apologetic whimper. "Do they have names yet?" Emma asked one evening, gently stroking the small puppy's head. "Not yet," Jeremy replied, glancing up from where he was bandaging the mother dog's paw. "I thought it'd be better to wait until they've settled in before naming them." Emma nodded, her gaze distant, lost in thought. For a fleeting moment, the usual tension between them melted away, replaced by an unspoken understanding. It was as though the dogs had created a fragile bridge between father and daughter. But that moment of peace was short-lived. A few days later, while Jeremy was cleaning the yard, a neighbor stopped by. Mrs. Callahan, a sharp-eyed but well-meaning woman, leaned over the fence with a frown. "Jeremy," she called out, "you've been busy with those dogs, haven't you?" "Yes, ma'am," Jeremy replied, wiping his hands on a rag. "Is there a problem?" "Well," she said hesitantly, glancing around, "I heard some things from the neighborhood kids. Something about what happened to the dogs before you found them." Jeremy straightened up, his stomach tightening. "What do you mean? What happened?" Mrs. Callahan sighed, lowering her voice. "The kids said the dogs were tied to the train tracks because they stole food. Apparently, it was some kind of prank that went too far, and..." She hesitated before continuing. "Your Emma's name came up. They mentioned she's been spending time with Mike and Layla a lot recently. I think Alex was involved too." Jeremy's heart sank as he thanked her and returned to the backyard, his mind racing. Could Emma really have been part of such a cruel act? It seemed so unlike her. And yet, he couldn't ignore her recent behavior or the neighbor's account. The thought gnawed at him. That evening, after dinner, Jeremy decided to confront his daughter. He found her in her room, scrolling through her phone, as if nothing was wrong. "Emma?" he said from the doorway, leaning against the frame. She looked up, her expression wary. "What is it?" "I need to ask you something," he said, his voice steady but firm. "Were you and your friends involved in what happened to those dogs?" Emma froze. For a moment it looked like she might deny it, but then her shoulders sagged and she whispered, "We didn't mean to hurt them." Jeremy's chest tightened. "Why, Emma?" he asked, his voice breaking slightly. "Why would you do something like that?" "They stole food from us," she said defensively. "We just wanted to scare them off. We didn't think—" Her voice faltered as guilt washed over her face. Jeremy closed his eyes, struggling to keep his frustration in check. He drew a deep breath and said, "You tied them to train tracks, Emma. That's not a prank. That's cruelty." "I know," Emma snapped, tears pooling in her eyes. "I didn't think it would go that far. It wasn't just me, it was Mike's idea." Jeremy knelt in front of her, his voice soft but firm. "It doesn't matter whose idea it was. You were part of it. And now we have to make it right." Emma wiped her eyes, looking away. "How?" "You're going to help me take care of those dogs," he said firmly. "And you're going to apologize to them. Not with words, but with actions. You'll show them kindness and take responsibility." Emma hesitated, then gave a reluctant nod. For the first time in months, Jeremy caught a glimpse of the kind-hearted girl he knew still existed beneath her tough exterior. Neither of them realized that this was just the start of a journey that would challenge them both, reshaping their relationship and their understanding of compassion and forgiveness. The next day, as Jeremy reflected on everything, the neighbor's story, Emma's confession, and the guilt that lingered in her eyes, Jeremy understood this wasn't just about doling out punishment. It was about finding the deeper issue. He believed every act, no matter how cruel, stemmed from something broken that needed mending. By late afternoon, the backyard had grown still, save for the faint rustling of leaves and the soft whimpers from the Jack Russell Terrier puppies. Sitting on the porch, Jeremy rested his elbows on his knees while the dogs lay at his feet. The sound of hesitant footsteps broke the silence as Emma shuffled closer, trailing her 3 friends. Mike led the group, his usual cocky demeanor replaced with nervous uncertainty. Behind him, Layla's hunched posture and darting eyes betrayed her unease, while Alex lingered at the back, his stiff posture and clenched jaw speaking louder than his silence. "Thanks for coming," Jeremy began, his voice calm but resolute. He motioned to the porch steps. "Have a seat. We need to have a serious conversation." Mike spoke up first, his voice defensive. "Look, we didn't mean for anything bad to happen. It was just a joke." "A joke?" Jeremy cut in, his tone sharper now. "Tying defenseless animals to train tracks? That's your idea of funny?" Mike's gaze dropped, his bravado crumbling under Jeremy's words. Beside him, Layla sniffled and wiped her face with her sleeve, while Alex, still silent, flexed his jaw. Jeremy let out a breath, softening his tone but keeping his conviction. "I'm not here to humiliate you or make you feel worse. I need to know why, from the beginning." Mike hesitated before mumbling, "We were at the park. We had some hot dogs, and the big one," he gestured to the mother dog, "came out of nowhere and took one." "She looked hungry," Layla added, her voice shaking. "But we were mad. We didn't have much food left, and—" Her voice faltered, and tears brimmed in her eyes. Alex finally broke his silence, his tone cool and detached. "It was Mike's idea to tie them up. I didn't want to, but I didn't stop it either." "Oh, give me a break!" Mike snapped, his voice rising. "You laughed. Don't act like you didn't think it was funny." "That's enough!" Jeremy's voice sliced through their bickering, silencing them. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. "You made a horrible choice, all of you. But this isn't about pointing fingers. It's about recognizing the harm you've done and owning up to it." The weight of his words hung in the air, the teens shifting uncomfortably. Finally, Emma spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "We didn't think it would go that far. We just wanted to scare them. Jeremy turned to her, disappointment mingling with compassion in his gaze. And what if I hadn't been there, Emma? What if that train had come first? Emma's face turned crimson, tears spilling over. I didn't think. That's the problem, Jeremy interrupted, though his tone remained gentle. None of you thought. But now, you have to. He looked at each of them, his voice unwavering. I'm not going to punish you. Instead, you're going to learn. These dogs need love, patience, and care. Everything you failed to give them. Starting today, you'll help me look after them. You'll learn what it means to take responsibility for another living being. The teens exchanged uncertain glances. Mike was the first to speak, his tone skeptical. What, like, feed them or something? Feed them, walk them, clean up after them, Jeremy replied. You'll be here every day until these dogs are healthy and ready for new homes. That's how you make this right. Layla nodded quickly, tears streaking her cheeks. Okay, she whispered. I'll do it. Alex hesitated, his arms still crossed. But after a long pause, he gave a stiff nod. Mike glanced between them, then sighed heavily. Fine, he muttered, looking down at his shoes. Jeremy nodded, a flicker of hope softening his stern expression. Good. Now let's get started. He started crafting simple toys for the puppies out of tennis balls and old ropes. While he played it cool, his grin betrayed him every time one of the puppies eagerly pounced on his handmade creations. Layla, the quietest of the group, found peace in caring for the mother dog. She spent hours beside her, gently brushing her fur and speaking in soothing tones. Slowly, the once nervous dog began to relax, wagging her tail faintly each time Layla approached. Alex, true to his stoic nature, formed a connection with the smallest, shyest puppy. He would take the pup for short walks around the yard, his tough exterior softening as the little dog looked up at him with trusting, wide eyes. Emma, meanwhile, surprised Jeremy the most. She threw herself into every task, feeding the dogs, cleaning their bedding, and sitting quietly with them in the evenings, with a level of dedication he hadn't seen in years. Although she didn't say it aloud, Jeremy could see her guilt reflected in her actions, as if silently apologizing to both the animals and him. One evening, as the golden light of the setting sun bathed the backyard, Jeremy sat on the porch, watching the teens with the dogs. Mike was tossing a ball for one of the puppies, laughing as it clumsily scrambled after it. Layla was seated cross-legged on the grass, stroking the now glossy coat of the mother dog they had named Daisy. Alex leaned against a tree, the smallest puppy nestled at his feet, its tiny snores barely audible in the stillness. Emma, for the first time in years, looked peaceful as she tidied up the area. Jeremy exhaled deeply, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. The road ahead was still uncertain, but he could see the beginning of something different, something better. These kids, once careless and detached, were slowly learning what it meant to care, to nurture, and to take responsibility for their actions. He held the small wooden cross around his neck and murmured a quiet prayer. Thank you, Lord, for guiding them, and for guiding me. The mornings at Jeremy's home had transformed. Instead of silence, they began with the lively sounds of barking Jack Russell Terrier puppies and bustling teenagers. The backyard, once dominated by the shade of an old oak tree, had turned into a vibrant space full of energy and hope. Every morning, Jeremy gathered Emma, Mike, Layla, and Alex to assign responsibilities, turning what could have been chores into valuable lessons. Today's focus is on trust, Jeremy announced one morning as they stood in a semicircle around the dogs. Daisy observed them cautiously, her confidence growing by the day. Her puppies tumbled over each other, their playful antics drawing laughter from the teens. "What do you mean by trust?" Layla asked, her hand nervously stroking Daisy's head. Jeremy crouched to meet her eyes. "It's about understanding what they need and showing them they're safe with us." Daisy and her pups have been through a lot. Every kind gesture, every kind word, it all helps them heal. Mike smirked, spinning a tennis ball in his hand. "So, basically don't mess it up." "Something like that," Jeremy replied with a raised eyebrow, suppressing a grin. As the days passed, the group found their rhythm. Mike, who had initially been aloof, began using his energy to create toys for the puppies. He scavenged ropes and old fabric from the shed, crafting makeshift tug toys. One afternoon, he held up a braided rope toy, his face glowing with pride. "Take a look at this," Mike said as he tossed the rope toy to one of the Jack Russell Terrier puppies. The tiny dog pounced on it instantly, growling and tugging with comical determination. Layla clapped her hands, her face lighting up with a smile that seemed to radiate from within. "That's incredible, Mike," she exclaimed. Mike shrugged, trying to play it cool, but the hint of a grin gave him away. "Yeah, well, I figured they needed something to chew on besides my sneakers," he said. Layla, usually quiet and reserved, began to find her confidence through her bond with Daisy. Every afternoon she carefully brushed Daisy's coat, working out tangles and wiping away the dirt that told the story of the dog's hard past. Daisy's tail wagged every time Layla approached, a silent yet profound expression of trust. One evening, as Layla gently brushed Daisy's back, she spoke up, her voice steady but soft. "I've never been good at much," she admitted, "but this feels different, like I'm actually making a difference." "You are," Jeremy said warmly, his voice full of encouragement. "More than you realize." Meanwhile, Alex, the quietest of the group, kept his distance at first, interacting with the dogs only when necessary. But over time he gravitated toward the smallest puppy, a timid little one with floppy ears and curious eyes. Slowly, a bond grew between them, with Alex often taking the puppy for walks around the yard, away from the chaotic energy of its siblings. "You've got away with the shy ones," Jeremy remarked one afternoon, watching Alex crouch to offer the puppy a treat. Alex shrugged, keeping his eyes on the pup. "I guess I understand them," he said quietly. "Sometimes you just need a little space." Jeremy nodded, sensing the weight of Alex's unspoken struggles. "And sometimes you need someone who gets it," he replied. Alex glanced up, his guarded expression softening. "Yeah," he said after a moment. "Maybe." Amid all this, the dynamic between Jeremy and Emma began to change. What had once been marked by tension and sharp words gradually softened as they worked together. Jeremy noticed the subtle shifts first. Emma staying late to help clean up, her laughter echoing across the yard as she played with the puppies, and the way she sometimes looked at him with a mix of admiration and gratitude. One evening, after the others had left, Jeremy and Emma sat on the porch, watching the sunset turn the sky into a canvas of fiery oranges and soft pinks. Daisy lay at their feet, her eyes half closed as one of the puppies nestled against her side. "You're really good at this, you know?" Emma said, breaking the comfortable silence. Jeremy looked over, surprised. "Good at what?" he asked. "Helping people, teaching, just being there when it counts," Emma replied. Her words made Jeremy's heart swell, though he kept his tone light. "Well, it's my job, isn't it?" he said with a small grin. Emma gave him a faint smile. "Not everyone would take the time," she said, her voice soft. especially not for a group of messed-up kids like us. You're not messed up, Jeremy said firmly. You're learning. We all are. As the weeks passed, the group began to find their rhythm, each contributing in their own way. Mike's inventive toys kept the puppies entertained. Layla's gentle care helped Daisy thrive, and Alex's quiet presence brought comfort to the most timid pup. Even Emma, once distant and defiant, had stepped up, often taking the lead in organizing their tasks. Together, they found lessons in the simplest moments. Patience in the wagging tails that greeted them, forgiveness in Daisy's trusting eyes, and compassion in the fragile lives they were helping to rebuild. And though none of them said it outright, they each carried the quiet satisfaction of knowing they were healing not just the dogs, but themselves and each other. For Jeremy, the transformation was nothing short of remarkable. The once fractured group of teens was evolving into a team that cared, that tried, that grew. Watching Emma laugh freely with her friends in the backyard, her walls slowly coming down, Jeremy felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. One evening, as the last golden rays of sunlight bathed the yard, Jeremy clasped the cross around his neck and murmured a quiet prayer. Thank you, Lord, for showing us all the power of kindness. Though there was still work to be done, he knew they were on the right path, a journey of redemption, compassion, and connection that had changed not only the dogs, but everyone involved. The yard, once a space of uncertainty, had become a sanctuary of joy and healing. Daisy, now full of strength, sported a shiny coat that gleamed in the sunlight. Her 3 puppies darted around the yard, tumbling over one another in endless play. The teenagers were spread out across the yard, each engrossed in their own activities. Mike was tossing a homemade toy for one of the Jack Russell Terrier puppies, his laughter ringing through the air. Layla, seated nearby, carefully brushed Daisy's fur, humming softly as she worked. Alex, the quiet one of the group, sat cross-legged in the grass with the smallest puppy snoozing contentedly in his lap. Meanwhile, Emma, Jeremy's daughter, who had once seemed so distant, was crouched beside one of the pups, her smile radiant and unguarded. For the first time in years, Jeremy felt a deep sense of calm. But more than that, he felt a glimmer of hope. Later that evening, after the teens had left, Jeremy and Emma lingered in the backyard. Daisy rested at Jeremy's feet, her head comfortably nestled on his shoe, while the puppies lay huddled in a cozy pile nearby. The setting sun painted the sky with streaks of orange and pink, casting a warm glow over the tranquil scene. "Dad?" Emma said suddenly, breaking the peaceful silence. Her voice was soft, almost tentative, and it caught Jeremy off guard. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" he asked gently, turning to look at her. Emma hesitated, her gaze fixed on the ground. "I've been thinking about Mom, about everything she did for us." Jeremy's chest tightened at the mention of his late wife, Grace. It was rare for Emma to bring her up, and when she did, it was often in passing. "She was incredible," Jeremy said, his voice carrying both warmth and a hint of sorrow. "She had this way of making everyone feel important, like they truly mattered. She loved deeply, especially you." Emma nodded, her eyes shimmering. "I remember how she used to talk to me when I was scared. She always seemed to know the right thing to say." Jeremy's lips curved into a faint smile as memories flooded back. "She had a gift for that. I think about her every single day, especially when I see you." "Me?" Emma asked, her voice tinged with surprise. Jeremy reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You remind me of her. The way you've stepped up lately. It's exactly what she would have done. I'm so proud of you, Emma." Emma's expression softened, and for the first time in a long while, the barriers she had built around herself seemed to crack. "Thanks, Dad," she said quietly. Over the following days, that moment became a turning point. Encouraged by Emma's openness, Jeremy began sharing stories about Grace, stories he had held onto in silence for years. He told Emma about the time Grace had rescued a stray kitten during a thunderstorm, nursing it back to health before finding it a loving home. He spoke of her kindness, her strength, and her ability to find beauty in even the simplest moments. Emma listened intently, her usual aloofness replaced by genuine curiosity. "I never knew she did all that," she said one evening as they sat on the porch. "There's so much you don't know," Jeremy admitted. "I was so focused on holding everything together after we lost her that I didn't take the time to share those parts of her with you. I'm sorry for that." Emma shook her head. "You don't have to apologize, Dad. You've already done so much for me." Jeremy smiled, his heart swelling with both pride and gratitude. "We're a team now, you and me, and I know your mum would be so proud of how far we've come." Meanwhile, the bond between the teens and the puppies grew stronger with each passing day. Mike, who once had a casual, almost dismissive attitude, began channeling his energy into designing elaborate toys for the puppies. Each new creation was more thoughtful and inventive than the last. "They deserve something special," he said one afternoon, his sincerity evident. Layla, who had always been reserved and hesitant, seemed to bloom with newfound confidence. Her gentle care transformed Daisy into a lively, trusting dog, and the experience clearly had a profound effect on Layla herself. One afternoon, Emma sat beside Jeremy, her expression unusually thoughtful. "You know, I think I'm finally good at something," she said, her voice carrying a mix of pride and surprise. Over the past weeks, Alex, once so reserved and hesitant, had formed an undeniable connection with the smallest Jack Russell Terrier in the litter. He had named the little dog Scout, and the two were nearly inseparable. "He just gets me," Alex said simply when asked about the bond, as if that summed up everything. And, in a way, it did. That evening, after a long day spent tending to the dogs and soaking in their playful energy, Jeremy and Emma settled on the couch. In front of them was an old family photo album, the pages worn but cherished. The images of Grace brought a mix of laughter and tears. Yet, for the first time, they both felt as if her presence in those photos was a celebration of her life, not just a painful reminder of her absence. Jeremy paused on a particular photo, his voice contemplative. "Your mum always said love isn't just about feelings, it's about actions, about showing up, even when it's tough." Emma stared at a picture of her mother cradling her as a baby. "I think I finally understand that," she murmured, her words carrying an honesty that touched Jeremy deeply. He turned to her, his heart full. "I think you do too." The weeks brought undeniable changes in Emma. The once distant and defiant teenager had grown into someone far more thoughtful and responsible. She now carried herself with a kindness that had once seemed out of reach. Of course, Jeremy knew their journey wasn't over. There would still be disagreements and moments of frustration. But as they sat together in their cozy living room, Scout nestled at their feet. The sense of warmth and connection between them was undeniable. The gap that had once felt insurmountable was now replaced by a bond forged through love, understanding, and the memory of Grace, whose influence continued to guide them. In the backyard, the scene buzzed with energy and excitement. Daisy, the Jack Russell Terrier mom, lounged under the large oak tree, her watchful eyes following her playful pups as they tumbled and wrestled in the grass. Teens milled around, each adjusting leashes and collars, their hands trembling slightly with nervous anticipation. Today was a big day. Mike, Layla, and Alex were preparing to take the puppies to their new homes. Jeremy leaned against the porch railing, a quiet pride lighting up his face. The transformation in the teens was just as inspiring as the recovery of the dogs. From the moment they took responsibility for the pups, they had grown into more empathetic and mature individuals. "All right, everyone," Jeremy called out, clapping his hands. "Ready to do this?" The teens nodded, though their excitement was mixed with a bittersweet sadness. Over time, each had grown attached to a specific puppy, and while they were excited to bring one home, saying goodbye to the rest of the litter felt like leaving behind family. Mike stepped forward first, crouching to scoop up the largest pup, a ball of energy with sharp eyes and an ever-wagging tail. "This guy's coming home with me," Mike announced with a grin. "His name's Rocket. Fits, doesn't it?" The pup barked in agreement, squirming in Mike's arms as though eager to explore the world. Mike laughed, adjusting Rocket in his grip. The once cocky and indifferent teenager now seemed genuinely eager to embrace the responsibility. "Rocket's going to keep you on your toes," Jeremy said with a chuckle, "but I think you've got what it takes." "Yeah," Mike replied, his tone steady. "I think I do too." Next was Layla, who knelt beside a gentle, doe-eyed pup. This little one, shy but affectionate, had stuck close to Layla throughout their time together. With careful hands, Layla adjusted the pink collar around the puppy's neck. "Her name's Bella," she said softly, stroking the pup's head. "She's so sweet. She deserves a name that's just as pretty." Jeremy smiled warmly. "Bella's lucky to have you. You've got a knack for bringing out the best in others." Layla blushed, her cheeks rosy, but her smile was bright as she lifted Bella into her arms. For someone who had once doubted herself, this moment felt like a declaration of both confidence and love. Alex stood quietly off to the side, cradling the smallest pup, Scout. Alex had always treated Scout with a gentle hand, understanding the little Jack Russell Terrier's need for patience and reassurance. "I think Scout's going to love it at my place," Alex said, glancing over at Jeremy. "We've got a big yard and it's peaceful." Jeremy nodded, sensing the bond that had formed between Alex and Scout. "He's going to thrive with you, Alex. And I think you'll thrive with him too." Alex's face softened as he reached down to scratch Scout behind the ears. "Yeah, maybe we'll figure things out together." As the teens prepared to leave with their new furry companions, Jeremy felt a bittersweet mix of pride and sadness. These young people, who had once been careless in their actions, had transformed into compassionate and responsible individuals. Their connection with the puppies had been healing, not just for the dogs, but for themselves as well. Before they left, Jeremy gathered everyone in the yard. Daisy, her golden coat shimmering in the sunlight, stood proudly by his side. "I want to say something before you all head out," Jeremy began, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "What you've done for these dogs, and for yourselves, is extraordinary. You've shown that people can grow, that mistakes can be made right with kindness and effort. I hope you carry that lesson with you wherever life takes you." The teens nodded solemnly, the weight of his words reflected in their eyes. One by one, they expressed their thanks, their gratitude genuine and heartfelt. With their puppies in tow, they walked away, ready to start a new chapter in their lives. As the yard grew quiet again, Jeremy turned to Emma, who stood silently by his side. "You doing okay?" he asked softly. Emma nodded, her gaze resting on Daisy. "Yeah, it's just strange. The puppies are gone, but it feels right." "It does," Jeremy agreed, crouching down to scratch behind Daisy's ears. "And Daisy's staying here with us." Emma smiled, her face lighting up. "She's part of the family now, huh?" "She always was," Jeremy replied with a warm chuckle. "Now it's just official." In the days that followed, life settled into a quieter, more purposeful rhythm. Daisy, now fully recovered, embraced her role as both a beloved companion and a reminder of the journey they had all shared. Emma took pride in caring for her, often taking her on long walks or curling up with her on the front porch as the sun set. For Jeremy, this marked a turning point in his relationship with Emma. The emotional distance that had once existed between them had been replaced by shared moments of closeness and mutual understanding. Daisy had become more than just a pet. She was a bridge that had brought them together. Every so often, Mike, Layla, and Alex would stop by with their puppies, sharing stories about their mischievous antics and growth. Each visit was filled with laughter and a camaraderie that had once seemed impossible. Watching the teens interact, their newfound maturity evident in their actions, Jeremy felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. What had begun as a tragedy had blossomed into a story of redemption, love, and the power of second chances. Daisy nudged his hand with her nose, her tail wagging softly. Jeremy smiled and knelt beside her. "You're a part of all this, you know," he murmured. "You're the reason we're here." Daisy looked up at him, her eyes steady and trusting. In that moment, Jeremy knew that while life would inevitably bring new challenges, they had found something truly precious, a fresh start built on kindness, responsibility, and the unbreakable bonds of family. The morning sun poured through the kitchen window, casting a golden glow across the small table where Jeremy and Emma sat. Daisy lay at their feet, her sleek coat glinting in the soft light. Their lives had settled into a peaceful rhythm, shaped by the quiet joys of caring for one another and an unspoken gratitude for how far they had come. Emma poured herself another cup of coffee, a habit she'd picked up from her father, and glanced down at Daisy. "She's really ours now, isn't she?" she said with a smile. Jeremy glanced up from his morning paper, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "She was always meant to be with us. We just had to realize it." Daisy, their spirited Jack Russell Terrier, let out a small yip as if in agreement, her tail tapping rhythmically against the wooden floor. Emma leaned down, instinctively scratching behind Daisy's ears, a habit that had quickly become second nature. "She knows she's home," Emma murmured, her voice soft with affection. Jeremy nodded, folding the newspaper and setting it aside. "And I think we've found our way home, too." Though the puppies had moved on to their new families, they remained a constant presence in Jeremy and Emma's hearts. True to their word, Mike, Layla, and Alex stayed in touch, their shared love for the dogs forging a bond that only grew stronger with time. One breezy Saturday afternoon, the backyard buzzed with laughter and energy as the teens brought their pups back for a visit. Rocket was a blur of motion, his wiry little body darting across the lawn as Mike hurled a tennis ball for him. Bella sat calmly at Layla's feet, her serene demeanor as steady as ever, while Scout trotted along beside Alex, a little shy but brimming with newfound confidence. "They've grown so much," Emma said, watching the lively scene unfold, her tone a mix of amazement and pride. "They sure have," Jeremy replied, his eyes following the bounding Rocket, "and so have their owners." Mike approached, wiping a sheen of sweat from his brow. "Rocket's a handful, but he's teaching me patience," he said with a wide grin, shaking his head at the energetic pup. Layla laughed, running her fingers through Bella's smooth fur. "Bella's like my shadow now. She's with me everywhere I go." Standing nearby, Alex added in a quieter voice, Scouts. Different now. He's calmer. He's been good for me. Jeremy's chest swelled with pride as he surveyed the teens and their pups. You've all done such a great job with them. Those dogs hit the jackpot with you three. As the afternoon wore on, the group gathered under the sprawling oak tree in the backyard. Stories flowed effortlessly, punctuated with laughter. Mike regaled everyone with tales of Rocket's mischief, while Layla shared how Bella had an uncanny ability to find the coziest spots in the house. Alex, smiling shyly, described Scout's growing bravery and how the once timid pup now followed him confidently everywhere. Emma chimed in with her own anecdotes about Daisy's quirks, her voice light and cheerful. For the first time in what felt like years, Emma's laughter rang out, bright and unrestrained. Jeremy, watching his daughter, felt a swell of emotion. He thought of Grace, his late wife, and how proud she would have been of the woman Emma was becoming. The ache of her absence still lingered, but it no longer felt like a burden. Instead, it was a warm memory that brought comfort. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the teens said their goodbyes, they promised to visit again soon. Daisy, wagging her tail, accompanied Emma to the gate, her small frame a reminder of the journey that had brought them all together. After everyone left, Jeremy and Emma sat side by side on the porch, the quiet evening wrapping around them like a blanket. Daisy sprawled at their feet, her steady breathing a calming rhythm in the stillness. "Do you think Mum would be proud of us?" Emma asked suddenly, her voice barely audible. Jeremy turned to her, his gaze tender. "I know she will be. She always believed in love and kindness, and she'd be so proud of how you've embraced that and shared it with others." Emma's lips curved into a soft smile, her eyes glistening under the fading light. "I think I'm finally starting to understand what she meant when she said love isn't just a feeling, it's something you show through your actions." Jeremy reached over, placing a comforting hand on hers. That was her most important lesson. And now, you're passing it on. As the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, the two sat in companionable silence, their bond stronger than ever. Daisy shifted, her tail thumping softly against the porch as if to remind them she was still there. Emma leaned back in her chair, a warm laugh escaping her lips. "It feels so good to know we're part of something bigger." Jeremy smiled, his heart swelling with gratitude. "That's what life is all about, Emma. It's the connections we build and the love we share. Those are the things that truly endure." As the night deepened, Jeremy clasped the wooden cross around his neck, his thoughts turning to quiet prayers of thanks. What began as a cruel twist of fate had evolved into a journey of redemption, compassion, and unwavering love. It stood as a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the invisible threads that tie us all together. At their feet, Daisy, the spirited Jack Russell Terrier, let out a contented sigh. She had become a constant reminder of the love that had brought them together and the hope for brighter days ahead. Life, unpredictable as it is, often weaves surprising connections and profound lessons into our paths. Through Daisy and her energetic litter of puppies, Jeremy, Emma, Mike, Layla, and Alex discovered a truth far deeper than sentiment. Love is an action. It's in the care we provide, the forgiveness we extend, and the moments when we choose kindness, especially when it's not easy. Their shared journey revealed that even the most fractured bonds can be mended with patience, compassion, and a willingness to try again. Jeremy and Emma's experience became a testament to the beauty of second chances, not only for the animals they rescued, but also for their relationships and hearts. Every step of the way, The presence of grace and faith guided them, helping them heal, grow, and strengthen the connections that define their lives. Daisy became much more than a dog. She became a symbol of hope. Her presence wove together the lives of a father and daughter, a group of once troubled teens, and a community united by acts of kindness and empathy. In much the same way, love works quietly, yet profoundly, connecting us in ways we may not always notice. It teaches us to find joy in giving and to cherish the bonds that make life meaningful. Through their story, we're reminded that even the smallest gestures can ripple outward, creating moments of grace and connection that endure far beyond what we could imagine. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt journey today. Stories like Jeremy and Emma's remind us of the incredible power of love, second chances, and the unexpected connections that make life so meaningful. Daisy and her puppies didn't just bring joy. They healed hearts and brought a community together. Now, we'd love to hear from you. Do you have a story about the love and bond you share with your pets? Maybe an animal that changed your life in a surprising way? Share your story in the comments below. We'd be honored to hear it. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another inspiring story. Together, let's keep spreading kindness, one story at a time. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next video.